You're listening to NFT 365, the first daily podcast on NFTs with your host, Fanzo, talking crypto, blockchain, Web3, non-fungible tokens, metaverse, and...
What the f*** is a non-fungible token?
We'll get to that.
What's up, friends? Welcome back to another episode of NFT 365. And for most of you, I talk a lot about, really the power of, Twitter Spaces, the power of social audio to, connect with people, to build relationships. And ultimately, for me, one of the big things about social audio is that, you can't mail it in, you can't outsource it, you can't have someone else do you for it. And for the most part, you can't fake it till you make it. Or if you are, you eventually are exposed. And the beauty of that, to me, has been just the ability to connect with some people that I believe are just amazing humans. And, it kind of cuts through a lot of things as far as, building relationships, shrinking that distance between, different people. And if you're like, wait a second, Brian, I'm not sold on that, I'm going to introduce you to a friend of mine who's going to come on here and we're going to chat a little bit about, all things, NFT Web3, but someone that I get to share the stage with on a weekly basis over there on the Twitter Spaces. But before we do so, definitely have to give a shout out to our sponsor, which is the Crypto Business Conference. It is happening October 9th to the 11th in beautiful San Diego. So for all those that want to level up on all things Web3, and even if you just want to get started on Web3, or maybe you want to build out your team for a future NFT project, definitely check them out. And, without further ado, beyond excited to welcome Manouschka. Welcome to NFT 365. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh my gosh, I'm finally on NFT 365. You only talk about it like 365 times a day, 365 days a year.
Well, trust me, you are on the top of my list. Excited to have you on the show. We co-host. We are lucky to have a mutual friend, Shira, who is kind of connected our worlds, which now is many months ago. It doesn't feel like it's that long, yet it does feel like we've been doing that for a good while. But we kind of came together doing Alpha Mondays with Shira, and I will just say, I'm just going to set the bar for those that are listening. First, as those that I've met in the Web3 space, especially in the NFT community, that represent everything what I believe is good for this space, but also are ones that, hold me accountable and hold, conversations accountable. And sometimes I get like a little bit maybe too fluffy or positive, or like I'm trying to see like the glass half full in some of these areas. And you've always been just someone that I've trusted as someone that will not, kind of give in to the hype or the FOMO. And I just love your background, your story, and some of the things you've been able to do in the space. But before we get into any of that, give our audience a little bit of background about yourself, because if they just jump to your Twitter, it's Haitian chef, and they're like, wait a second, she's on NFT 365. So give us a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into this.
Okay. Hi, my name is Chef Manouschka Guerrier, and yes, I am a Haitian chef. I got into NFTs like most people did through drop-in social audio. The pandemic happened. We were on lockdown. We had no way to interact with one another socially. We had no way to network. And this is where we were. My industry was completely decimated. It's like, why would you need a private chef when you can order Nobu to come to your house now, and Spagos and all the great, stuff. And then you have like these Instagram and TikTok chefs who, they'll do my job that I used to have to sign an NDA for, because I worked for a lot of high profile clients and celebrities. They'll do it for like next to nothing. And I'm old. I'm only 47 next week. And my niece had been telling me about Bitcoin since like 2015, 2016. Can you imagine if I just did it back then? Yeah. But now I'm on lockdown. I'm not working. I go into learn about crypto. And then from there, I stumbled into an NFT space because it was constantly in my hallway on Clubhouse. And it was Ferocious and Artifacts collaboration that like made history, like at 11 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And I just heard, it's just something like, I was an athlete. I played soccer for 20 years. So I know what it's like to have people rooting for you who are in the stands, who are not on the field. But the way the community was rooting for him in that moment, on that day, it really was like they won too. It really was like they believe so much in this idea that's around art and love and community, and they're seeing someone who's a leader in that make it. And I was like, wow, okay, this is pretty cool. And then that night at 7:00 at night was Blau's history. Yeah. And I was just like, okay, that's it. Like, I need to find out more and more about NFTs. And luckily, a very good friend of mine, the late great Jin Yu, who went by Wolf X Lion,
Yes.
We've known each other for 16, like almost 20 years.
Wow.
And yeah, we're club kids. We come from the club scene. And because we were friends and he knew me, he would bring me into these stages and into these spaces or these rooms I always went to go listen to him to. And that's how people started to get to know me, started to wonder, okay, well, who is she? And blah, blah. And, he would always give like the most incredible introductions about people to the point where you're like, oh my God, is that me? So I kind of got fast tracked into like the little cool kids sect thing. But at the same time, I just thought that if we're going to be building this space from the ground up, we got to do it with some type of integrity, because I didn't come into chat rooms when chat rooms were popular in Web 1.0.
Right.
I did it, and then I missed out on all of that. Like, people would talk about Friendster and Napster and all these different little other communities they were in. But then I learned in MySpace, like, okay, so I'm not just connecting with strangers on the web. I'm connecting with friends who have friends, and we're, it's a collaborative type of communication and socializing. So I was like, all right. And then when Vine came out, I judged that and didn't do that and see, what happened. And then Instagram came out and I judged that. And, here I am, could be a social media star, doing cooking recipes. But because I judged it, I missed the boat, or at least I feel that way. Right. So coming into the NFT space, no matter how much it felt like, all right, so you just learned about crypto, predominantly about Bitcoin and through NFTs about Ethereum. You don't know all the mechanics and the techniques, but you do know the blockchain is this undeniable technology that we all are going to be living off of. So from those instances, I was like, you just gotta show up. Just show up every day. Just show up, and that's what happened.
Well, I mean, I think that, the part of it, private chef, right, and world being, really kind of flipped upside down. I can relate in the sense as being a, full-time speaker and going from, 64 gigs planned for that year. And, that in 1 week, I lost 18 of them. And then I lost, the rest of them over the next couple of weeks. And, I found Clubhouse like you did. And funny enough, we didn't really, you and I, we were in some of the same rooms and some of the same conversations, but we weren't on a lot of the same stages. And I honestly was, NFTs felt so bro-y to me, to put it in like the best way I could put it, that the only time I would stay in rooms when there was actually, either females on stage or those that weren't kind of like that, kind of giving me that impression. And I think part of me, to your kind of what you were mentioning about like judging it, I was judging everyone that was in that NFT space. I mean, and so much so, like I tweeted out, a screenshot of Clubhouse and the day Bored Apes happened and said, look at these idiots, buying these monkey photos. Because for me, like my first impression, it was really early. I remember it was like that December, Clubhouse days where before even Clubhouse had their big boom, that a couple of the rooms I had got into, even in Clubhouse, I was kind of turned off on Clubhouse. And I have a whole story about I uninstalled Clubhouse because I just felt like it was very too much like elitist feeling when I had got in there.
I was like all those money people, like all day. I'm like, where do you make you a millionaire?
Yeah. Oh yeah. 10 hacks to make you a millionaire. And they're doing it from their parents' basement and, that world. But, I wanted to tap into, so like, your world gets flipped upside down as a chef and you're kind of exposed to like, Bitcoin and then you learn a little bit about NFTs and Ethereum. Was investment or tech or that in your background prior to any of this kind of coming in? Because I mean, as we get into the story and people see what all the things that you've accomplished now, I think it's kind of important to like just kind of recognize like where you kind of sat at. Like when you were looking at NFTs, was it like, hey, there's a financial opportunity, there's a community opportunity, or like, hey, like how are you relating that into like kind of your world?
Thank you. That's a really good question. It's much better than what's your favorite thing to cook? What's your favorite thing to make? I like to make money. Like
dollar bills.
Like, really. I think for me is that I've always understood and actually loved, and I'm addicted to the internet. I just love it. It is something that has always given me. I've always loved learning things, and I feel like if you don't learn something new every day, you're dead. So this was something that gave me that 24/7, and is in the palm of my hand. So knowing that and understanding that and seeing, the different groups of people that have come into the internet digital culture in the last 30 years, it was always like rooted in like somebody just wanting to be seen and heard. So I understood there was power in that. So and plus I love art. I grew up in Miami. I grew up around, and my family's from Haiti. It's like just surrounded by art. So
Right.
here are these things. Here's the internet, which is to me the technology and art coming together and people coming together at a time where we physically could not.
Yes.
So there was really so much power in that moment that I felt like I was privileged to be a part of. So like, let me learn. My tech background goes as far as like, when you were doing your MySpace page and you got to like hook it up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Or like when I started my blog, and actually it was from my blog that Food Network discovered me, and flew me out to New York, and I tested, and they put me on this show, which was about private chefs, and that's what changed the whole trajectory of my life. And where did that come from again? The internet.
Wow.
So like, I get it. I get that. So that's why when I show up, you see me show up the way I do. I don't show up in like, the whole crypto bro, Silicon Valley type of mentality. I need to be proven. I need to be, like all this like weird shit on top of like needing clout, needing, a certain amount of followers. You got barely anybody who wants to go and meet with you for dinner in real life, but you got 250,000 fucking followers.
Yep. That's true.
That's when more and more I was learning the power of like showing how your life is on the internet versus how it is in real life. And people have been able to make money that way. And so with NFTs, even though like you can make money doing like TikTok videos and being like an influencer in that way, here you can do it trading art. So for me, I know I use a ton of examples. I'm a Virgo and also have ADHD. And so there's all of these thoughts and all these things that go in my head that make the decisions that I make that go into it.
Well, I love all of that, of course. ADHD for me too. That's why, partially why we get along so well together. You mentioned, and we lost Jin, and I remember, I was very blessed to have shared many stages with him, and we had actually co-hosted some mental health rooms together over the year on Clubhouse. And I love that you had like kind of like that background as well. I also found out in a random Twitter space that you were in a Ja Rule video, right? That was that was like, I thought you were definitely like trying to pull one over on us, and then you flashed up the photos, and I was like, oh, like legit.
Yeah, it was a video host. So I mean, that's also what helped me navigate through the space. I had been. This is like probably like my fourth or fifth career, to be honest with you. I was an actress and a model and a video hoe and a dancer. So it's like I had always been connected to celebrity culture somehow, some way. So like, when Jin wanted to do a space, he would call me up and ask me. And so like one time I pitched him Dogface.
Oh yeah.
And Dogface, it was like absolute darling of lockdown when he did that video that went viral. And Keith was in the space, and Keith, the president of Time, was like, "Wait, who are you? Wait, how do you know Dogface?" And like, I want to know. And then like he hits me up, and he's like, "Can we have a conversation?" I'm like, "Holy shit! I'm about to like have a phone call. Like he has my phone number. I have his phone number with the president of Time." And this is coming off the heels of, I don't know, talking to Edward Snowden and Kim.com. Like it was just, that moment in time was just so massive. And at a time that was just so dark and scary. Like I can have conversations with absolute thought leaders and luminaries all over the world in my underwear, in my bedroom. I'm completely myself and they're fine with it. Like it was just amazing. And I'm so grateful for him, because had it not been for him, I don't think this is where I would be, for sure.
Well,
I'd
and
probably still be in those Bitcoin rooms.
yeah, no kidding, right? You'd be stuck in that,
I would be in crypto Twitter, not NFT
yeah,
Twitter.
which are two different worlds for those that have not ventured. Every once in a while, my feed starts to go that way, and I'm like, no, how do I get the algorithm to go back?
I know, but if I see one more picture of Vitalik's dick, I might have to go and check out where the adults are hanging out.
Yeah, I know it does. There is definitely the child side here, and actually, that's like not the Vitalik's dick side being the segue, but the segue in one of the things you mentioned is like you make like making money, right? And I really applaud your when you speak up and you're calling people out or calling things out. A lot of it has to do with either saying what others are thinking and either not willing to say, or even just identifying like, no, we can't make ourselves little here because we've already done that. And we've been kind of, we've already walked that path. And so I'm curious, like if we fast forward and we'll kind of put some in the middle there, but there's a Time, magazine post pinned to the top of your Twitter account. I remember as, through back channel of what you were kind of pulling together there in New York City. And I will just say, like, the way that I believe you are one of the best, if not the best follow to have on all things, in this space, because you are in the know, but you don't need to flex like you are in the know or have every one of these collections or the people that are in that space. But you're also one that keeps things very real and, and down to earth, and you're, into making it about others. Right. And I think that to me is like a beautiful thing in this space. And so I'm curious, like you mentioned, like when I look at this space, it's really the intersection in my multiple careers that I didn't know I was looking for, right? And that's kind of how I identify Web3. And I feel like you're very similar in that. And I'm curious from like you have not only, I always feel like you do a great job of always presenting like, hey, let's remember the artist's view here. And then you also do a great job on like, let's remember, the women's take on here or the BIPOC take on here. But then you're also very good on the, hey, let's also give grace, but let's also hold accountability. And I'm curious, just
oh my gosh, you actually do read my stuff.
I do. I'm as much of a fan as anything else. Well, and I would just say, like, with all of that, like your ability to keep it real, keep it grounded, but also see what is possible in this Web3 space. I'm just curious, like what excites you, but also kind of like, because it's like that excitement and overwhelming, right? And I think for so many that are out there, many people could have been on those clubhouse rooms and been kind of welcomed in those spaces, and they could have easily taken a different trajectory. And some of them are in our space, and they're not people that I'm asking to be on the podcast just because of the way that they present themselves versus the way that you do. So I'm just curious from like, what do you kind of attribute that from? Like you are confident and bold, yet you're openly talking about how curious you are to learning. And like, that is such a beautiful thing to see. And I hope others can, emulate that. And I would just love to know where you kind of get that from.
It's just some way I've always been. And again, I'm going to have to attribute this to Jin as well, because I mean, his curiosity was insatiable. And it was something that like I loved tuning in every single day to listen to him. And it didn't matter, if it was an NFT room or one of those, one of his spiritual space rooms. I really enjoyed listening to him and seeing him like find his voice for the first time after all those years of knowing him. And I'll never forget my mom, who threw me out when I was 14. She fell and she did not go to the hospital, and both of her legs were infected, and she was running the risk of losing both of her legs. And our relationship has never been solid since that time, but I felt as her daughter it was my duty to go and check in on her. So I took 7 weeks between the end of April, like mid-April to May. And this was during the whole Bored Ape Yacht Club craziness.
Yep.
Even though like I was in some of those clubhouse rooms, I really wasn't like paying attention to like what was going on. I kind of felt also as a Black person, the ape thing was weird, but that's neither here nor there right now because we're talking about my mom. So I was there, and it was a really emotional time for me. And I think by like my second week there, or maybe even my 10th day there, I get a phone call from Jin. not a DM, not a text, a phone call. And he's asking me, hey, are you okay? I haven't seen you around. Like, what's going on? And I was literally in the car with my mom next to me after I took her to a appointment that was just horrible. And I was just like in a really fucked up space and should have been able to talk to a friend at that moment. And here he called me. And this is someone who was hosting how many rooms per day on a various amount of subjects and like really big, like, 2,000, 3,000 people rooms. Like, and he noticed that I wasn't there. So he has this quote that everybody loves, like, what if success is measured in how you make other people feel? And I'll never forget the way he made me feel that day. I'll never forget the day, how he made me feel all the days that he brought me up to speak to like mind-blowing people. So that's how I show up in this space. That I really admired how he did that. That's how I show up to people, to my friends and my family in real life. So I was like, well, you're going to do that here too. And that's the thing that artists need. Artists need to feel like they're seen. Artists need to feel like they're recognized, that they're appreciated, that they're loved, because the starving artist narrative has been like centuries old,
Right.
But because of thanks to this technology, now they don't have to. They can live off of their work, but now they're also dealing with these crypto bros who love to flip and who don't give a shit about them. They just want their bags, and they want their bags pumped. And so it's like, they're like really at like this crossroads right now, because what they love to do is focus on their work. They don't want to be in stages and talk and promote themselves and shill. They don't want to do any of that shit. They just want to make art. So, I like coming in, and empowering them and letting them know that they're seen and they're appreciated. And I think they're incredibly brave, and they should know that. So thankfully they trust me at the same time, and I trust them, and it's something that we're choosing because we have the opportunity here than before. If I didn't judge all of those things that ended up hitting and doing really well, I can be in a whole other position right now. So I feel like with Web3, these gatekeepers aren't keeping the information from us anymore. We're able to participate this time around. If you and I were told, hey, you want to come and be a part of this thing called Facebook?
Right.
We're like, what? Huh? No. Or, in hindsight, like, shit, man.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I love those different components of like where, not only that kind of shows up, but I also think one of the things that I think is just an interesting part of this dynamic, right, is that, once you're in the know and you're making these relationships, and, the opportunity to be a part of a lot of projects is kind of, becomes at our disposal. But we also know that also comes with some level of, either scrutiny or decisions, like, through your own, kind of moral compass of, okay, is this something that I want to be aligned with or even hold anymore based on, what they represent or who they are?
Like, we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice, because look what happened look what happened to Facebook.
Yep.
Okay. Facebook was my happy place for many, many years. And then when the Trump era happened and you saw what people really thought,
Yeah.
people that you've known your whole entire life, you grew up with, they've been in your house, and you don't see all these things happening to Black people or to Black women or to women.
Right.
Like, and it was just like, holy shit. And then when I talked to people who worked at Meta, and they're telling me how the culture was over there, I was like, so much of this shit is your fault. Like, you guys had a responsibility here. And because of ad revenue and data that you needed and all these things, you allowed our country to go to shit. So seeing the power of technology when you're mixing it with social capabilities, it's like you need as many people responsible building this thing than not.
Yes.
So as terrified as I am some days, because I don't know all the ins and outs, what I do know is that should we have this united front that's about equity, that is about inclusion, that is about fairness, that is about community, and people, you know, I know they did that whole wag me thing and we found out it's not real, but just, you know, for people to be able to survive, earn a live, I mean, something to live, not survive, you know?
Right.
I feel like we really need to emphasize education and having that available to underserved and underprivileged people who can also, you know, with the right tools, be able to contribute to the space and make the world a lot better instead of just these same, like, I don't know, man, these really same messed up people who constantly are pushing the needle of where we go, you know?
Yeah, and I think, you know, in this space, I think more so than anything else, it feels, and and hopefully it's more than just a feeling, that we do have that power, right, to stand up for a lot of these things. And I think for me, like, you know, as an advocate and ally, it wasn't until the murder of George Floyd that I recognized that I was being silent way too often, assuming that I was being helpful, when I had to learn the hard way. And
The
you know, kind of have
murder
that.
of George Floyd, I have to interrupt for a second.
Oh,
The
go
murder
for it.
that should have been the game changer for everybody. That was the first 4 months that happened within the first 4 months of lockdown, and my dad was
Yep.
with me. And I'll never forget. It was actually in this room. We were watching the footage, and the guy has his knee in the back of his neck, and he's screaming for his mother while urinating on himself. And the guy has his hands in his pockets, and there's officers, I mean, these are people that we pay to protect us, are flanked by him.
Mm-hmm.
No one's doing anything. And then there's somebody recording it. There's someone literally standing there recording it. Like, these are so many things that went down and we're watching it happen. And I look over at my dad, and my dad is like in tears. And my dad, like, he looks like Carl Weathers. He's like this super big, like he's a dude. Like, he's a man's man. Like, Charles Bronson is like his idol, and Bruce Lee, like that type of shit. And he's crying, and he's looking at me. He's like, "This country is a lie."
Mm.
And, you know, coming from Haiti, coming from a third world country, they came here with really big expectations and hopes and dreams.
Right.
And immediately learned that it's not real here, no matter how many times you try. So with Web3, we really have this opportunity here to make things right and get things right, because we should have never seen that happen, because it never should have happened. But the fact that your kids can look at that on a device in their hand,
Yep.
that's mortifying.
It is. You know, and I think, you know, with where that also became, you know, the idea of like, what, you know, how are we going to change it? And it has to be much more than just our words, but it needs to start at least, you know, with our words. And, you know, I remember, you know, one of the first marches that I brought my three daughters to, and, you know, for them, I'm very blessed that, you know, as a co-parent, we have a very fluid, open conversation about a lot of things that would have never been discussed in my house growing up, from ADHD and medication to, you know, me marrying my best friend, Ashley, to her wife, and my daughters being a part of that. And, you know, the
Wait, what?
yeah, so I have there's just a lot of it, you know, beautiful things that I'm able to introduce my daughters to, but even bringing them into the conversation of like, hey, we need to show up, we need to actually kind of, you know, make an impact, and, you know, use our voice and use, you know, what we have at our disposal. And I think one of the things that I love about Web3 is that ability that we can kind of just step up, and we can speak with not only our words but also our bags, but we can also, you know, kind of bring the people together, right people together, and do some amazing things. And talk to me a little bit about what you brought together there in New York to kind of recreate an iconic moment of the past. And you kind of fast forwarded us to that with NFTs and Web3. Talk to us a little bit how that came together, and let people know a little bit about what you were able to kind of, you know, spearhead. And I know it was a lot of people, and you're going to give credit to all of the people, but I love what
I'm
you
like,
were.
how do I talk about this? I feel like I've been rambling about everything, but literally, Brian, that's how my brain works.
Hey, and that's how this podcast works. So our audience is used to it.
I'm a chef. I like to put a lot of spices and things into making my recipe, and that's why it's good. That's the same thing with what I do. For me, it started in NFT NYC last November, and I was the only Black person, definitely the only Black woman, if not the only Black person in a lot of the events that I went to, and these were like huge events.
Right.
And the crazy part is, I think like 90% of the Uber drivers I had were Black. And there was like always somebody in staff, where there's a bartender, a waiter, or a hostess of some sort, were Black. So they're noticing what is this thing? What is this?
Right.
And they're seeing the cars and the NFT. It says NFT everywhere. So, and they're taking me to an NFT event, and he's asking me, and they're asking me like, what is this? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's this, blah, 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 da, 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 explaining to them the whole like NFT thing. And the same thing, I'm like talking to a bartender, and the bartender's like freaking out because they're not getting any tips because nobody carries cash. I'm like, well, actually, you should have like your Venmo scan, or, something, your Cash App, your Zelle, whatever, because, these crypto people, they don't carry cash with them if you want to get a tip. And they're like, oh, really? Okay, so then why are you here? And what is this? And da da da. So that was one aspect of it. Then the second was John Knopf, who, if you ever interview him and talk to him and talk about the Clubhouse days, he will give me a lot of credit for building him up, because I brought him up on some really amazing stages where he, like, no one would have known who he was. Like, it was just like that. He was like our cruise director, and would like take us on all these adventures around New York. And one of them was to meet up with Noah over at Christie's so we can see Beeple Human One.
Yep.
And so it's like Klon, Evan, Pablo Stanley, Drift. Like, it's like insane, the people that I'm with, to go and see Beeple Human One with the director over at Christie's. It was just like, are you freaking kidding me? And then so when we walked outside after we did the tour, Fro comes running over, and he's coming from Ferocious's paint party, and he's got paint all over him. He's like, Pharaoh painted my shoes, and he's showing us his shoes, and he's all excited. And then Keith runs over, and there's finally, I'm meeting the president at the time face to face. And Thank You X is there, and War Huddle, and like all these people, and they're like, oh, let's take a group picture. So we take this group picture right in front of the doors of Christie's with the sign over us, and I'm like, oh my God, this totally reminds me of A Great Day in Harlem. Like, look at like all of these leaders. And I think if you like can look up some tweets I did in the past, whenever we talked about that day, I said it since November.
Wow.
So then when Frenzies comes out, and I'm seeing the way that Sam and Turi are being treated, and I'm seeing how I'm like, wait a minute, okay, these guys have been a huge part of culture for the last 2 decades. Like, it is an honor that we have them here in this space. It's an honor we have Dower Darsels in this space.
Right.
And I'm seeing the way they're treated. I'm like, well, shit, these people, they don't really know their art history. They really don't know. So those 3 occurrences, I was like, okay, the next time I go to New York, I want to shoot all the Black people in the space. And we're going to do a great day in hip hop for Web3. So I had that in my mind. I wanted to do it guerrilla style. But then I was like, well, shit, Keith did tell you all those months ago, if you ever have a favor, or if there's anybody that, I need to meet, to let him know, and he can have it happen. So he was in Liverpool. Well, he was on his way back to the States from Liverpool, and I called him, and I was like, hey, I have this idea. I would really love for time to cover it. And he was like, I don't know. Esquire already did it, and XXL already did it. And, why don't you call Esquire? Like, because he's thinking about it as like, he doesn't want to disrespect, somebody else. And I'm thinking, well, you're the one who's in NFTs. I don't know anybody from Esquire who's in NFT, but you're here every day, and you're the president of Time, and we're friends. So he was just like, he like flat out said no. And I was like, damn. And the more I talk to people about it, the more they're like, Manouschka, this has to happen. Like, we need we need this, because it was like nobody knew their art history that I felt, that I was seeing, that were taking control of the space. And a lot of Black people weren't being seen and heard. And here we have started this camaraderie in the space where we're supporting one another, but it's like our PFPs and our usernames, you know? So it was really, really important for me, for the community, to have a moment where we all got to meet together face to face. Because we have a really long road ahead of us, Brian. Like,
Right.
we do. Like, it's this shit. Hey, this is insanity to me, to be honest with you. But it's like, I feel like we have to go through the trenches to get it right. I hit up Maya, and I hit up Barack. I hit up the people that I knew worked, Tamika. I hit up the people that I knew worked that time, and that were friends in the space for a while. I'm like, you guys, we have to do this. And Maya was like, you're absolutely right. And so he I don't know if he got strong-armed into it, but or I don't know what went down to make it happen, but he's like, okay, we're gonna do it. And then they send me Andrew Chow. Like, I mean, he's the one who wrote the Vitalik piece. Like,
Yes.
Like, holy crap, you know?
Yep.
So another thing that went down was I was working with Shira as an advisor to House of First, and they had this drop, Black is Beautiful, come out.
Yep.
And I really love Nick. Like, I think it's such a blessing that we have him. You know, he's somebody who, because of his epileptic seizures, and then he got anxiety from the epilepsy, could not work anymore. So he couldn't provide for his family. And his wife bought him an iPad, and in order for him to deal and to cope with his ailments, he drew. And he would draw these incredible pieces. And he drew these 1,000 pieces in a year, in 3 years. In 3 years. And I just thought that was just like, he's like Basquiat meets Beeple with like a hip hop flair and pop culture, like, you know, with Black Stewie and Black Bart. Like, he had this way to make Black beautiful, you know? And I felt like, well, him coming from Instagram, it's going to be kind of a tough sell, because it's like, well, why should we buy this as an NFT when we can see all 1,000 pieces on Instagram for free? So he offered something to our community that they need to understand about this space when we're onboarding them, is about ownership.
Right.
Okay. So I thought it was really important that he got the backup that he needed, because, you know, the drop was in a couple weeks and he didn't have a community rallying behind him.
Right. I'm
thinking, what better to have rallying behind you is like all the Black people in the space. We're all meeting in Harlem. And you know what? So first, let's go into a restaurant, because Black people are notoriously late everywhere. So we can start 2 hours before the shoot, and then people can like sit down and eat and drink and like talk to one another. And let me tell you, that was within itself, without even the shooting part, but like the meeting first, like that was, people needed that badly. Like, your soul needs that to validate that you're in a right place, because it's really, there's some days that are so scary. You're like, what the fuck am I doing here?
Yeah.
What the fuck am I doing here? Like, but we have to be here. So having that, and then walking down the street holding Nick's amazing art, because Black Herb from the Painting House, who's Ja Rule's partner, thought of it like the day before. Like, I'm gonna get all these things printed up, which I thought was brilliant, because I'm also like, it's a bear market. We don't want to, like, you know, push this on people either, you know? So I just think that the whole way that flowed and showed what I loved about the space in the beginning, collaboration, really worked like so beautifully, because we created a moment that will go down in history.
For sure.
You know? And so once we're like walking down the street and we're holding this heart and we're chanting Black is beautiful, and you got Ja Rule's, you know, that distinct legendary voice, you know, to follow. And we're walking down this legendary street to this iconic spot, and you can literally feel like the electricity come up from the ground. And then you can feel it coming from down as well, as like neighbors are coming out, and those steps are really high. So they're above us and they're like, trying to find out what's going on. And some of those neighbors were there in the original.
Wow.
Like, one guy was there. He was on the floor with Count Basie.
Wow.
He was there. And there was a lot of women who were there during the hip hop one in 1998. So they remember what that was. And they're like, well, who are you guys now? We're the Web3 people, And it was just like, and then Time was there and Time captured it. And Time was like, like Keith called me right after, like right when he ended. He's like, I am so proud of you.
Oh.
I am so proud of you. He's like, you did good. You did good. I didn't see the vision. I didn't see, you got those people out there. And what I heard was astounding. And he was like, you're in Time forever. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, who would have thought that, those months ago? And I think, I love the whole story, right? And there's chills on all those different aspects, right? Of your, your commitment to not take a no and to also recognize.
Which I would have never done before.
Yeah, that's amazing, right? I think that's.
I don't like asking friends for favors. That's number one. So
we share that in common. That's
right.
Yeah, that's.
He had told me months ago if there was anything, and I was like, no, man, you're like my friend. And it's like, cool, you work at Time, but like,
Yep.
But this was something that was bigger than me. It was bigger than me, and it was something that was necessary. And in the interim, I was rewarded for it, and I didn't anticipate that, and it just was a really good feeling.
Well, I love that story. I love that we were able to kind of bring that also to life in this like journey part. But I'm curious, just from like for our listeners' side, right there, your world as a chef still exists, right? And I remember messaging with you. I was actually trying to get you on the podcast before New York, and you're like, that ain't happening. Like, yeah, I'm doing these 4 events. I'm also doing the, and so talk to me a little bit about like because like part of this also comes down to like monetization, where you currently don't have your own collection that you're dropping, where most people assume those that are in a space over a certain amount of time end up figuring out like, hey, that's the way I'm going to monetize. But then there's also people that kind of like lose, like, I can't do my Web 2 world and my Web 3 world. Talk to me a little bit about how you balance that and how you kind of look at your monetization in this place.
Well, I got really lucky because going to those events and being the only Black person, I was also the only person from hospitality who understood, okay, this is not fucking okay that people spend, thousands of dollars on a JPEG and they're going to a glorified frat party.
Mm-hmm.
People who have held on to these JPEGs instead of flipping them at, 9, 10, 30 ETH should not be going somewhere where they don't have something decent to eat. Or they're paying for their drinks, or there's no swag. They have to buy their hoodie. Like, you don't treat your holders like that. And that was something that was like gravely missing. And I also didn't appreciate how people would do these drops and they didn't budget how to do the IRL meetups. Mm-hmm. So luckily CyberCongs hired me for Art Basel last year, and I really got to show what an event should feel like and look like. And it went down as one of people's favorites events. And then I got to do Drift and Diana's in New York. Oh no, before Drift and Diana's, I got to do Trippy and Canada's in Eat Denver. Again, everyone who was talking about how that experience went and how unforgettable that was, and was one of the best that they had, if not the best. And then Digital Diaspora, CPG, Pop, and like, yeah. So I was able to, talk to leaders in these really great teams and ask them like, hey, can I come and do your event? And I did. I don't know how many people you can hire in the event planners that take ETH, or I do. So let's do this.
that is definitely that's definitely a little niche there, probably from a event planner side. But there's
Brian, you've been to some of these events, right?
Oh, When you said frat party, that in November, for those that weren't at that NFT NYC, they have no idea. I mean, going into some of these places where your feet stuck to the floor, people were pouring like shots in these little plastic cups in the corner, and I was like, wait, all these people are worth how much? Like, it was, I mean, you were right. Like the level up that was needed and I identified. I mean, I remember looking around and it's like, yeah, this is not what I thought it was.
Which is fine, but you're a holder for more than one NFT. Yeah. So you're going around 4 freaking parties like that.
Yep.
And you didn't stop to eat anywhere.
Nope. Oh yeah, we all felt it for like the week afterwards as well, right? Like that's part of it. I'm curious to, because with your, connections, with your, background, but also your vision and mission to kind of, not only make, a greater impact, but for, to stand up in a lot of these causes. How do you look at projects today? Or even we don't have to say during the bear market, but like, how are you identifying projects that you want to hold or be proud about holding? And then how do you kind of balance that also need to recognize, and I think you and I have talked about this kind of, back channeling, like, there are some people that we want to support and love championing, but we also just have to recognize that sometimes they're not creating something that's going to benefit either us or, the greater community. How do you look at projects right now as far as either ones that you want to jump into or ones that you want to support? I mean, I'm thankful for you. And, if you have to go back and listen to Mikey's interview, I had Mikey on yesterday or 2 days ago. It was yesterday.
We got you in CPG.
Yeah. So I'm now in there and Mikey gave you a lot of love in that space as well. And I'll just say, like, every person that I know that knows that you and I are connected, they talk about you at the most highest of grace and praise. And that is very rare in this space. And so that actually is part of the question I have is you are able to make an impact and be strong and powerful and stand up while also being in these different spaces. How do you kind of look at these projects and how they kind of show up and how you're going to align them with your kind of brand? Because that is a big deal, especially because I think the reputation that you've built.
I mean, it's tough. It's tough. It's tough when, you see something like Other Deeds and CPG and Jadu, like all of the projects that I absolutely love because I love the leadership on it. I think the leadership is great. And that's something that's lacking in life in general. And being that Web3 is such this, I mean, it's so vast, it's massive, having as many great leaders in it is imperative. So you listen to Chris Cantino, it's oh, holy shit,
Yep.
So that's number one. Then there's how their leadership trickles into their team. So people who are like Mikey, for instance, we're so lucky that he's in the space, period, let alone over at CPG. He's absolutely brilliant and a badass. And then how the team is able to trickle down to the moderators, the people who handle the community, the people who, make sure, because here's the thing, we have a lot of places where we can spend our time. We can sit in front of a TV and watch and Netflix and chill, or we can hang out in Discord and a Telegram with a community that really means something to you. So that's what I look for when I get into a project. Now, all of them I mentioned, they either started at the high end or shot up to the high end and all, right, dropped, and I still held anyways. Goblin Town, same.
Yep.
But it's just, it's that core of who they all are is why I stick around. I'm like, okay, then you know what? These are long-term plays. And it's fine.
Yep.
Because I'll spend that money on bullshit anyway. Because I'm not a degen that I like a degen that likes to hang out with the degens and talk shit and have fun, but
yeah,
making money as a degen is just not my thing. It's not, it just doesn't, it feels dirty to me, to be honest with you, So those seem to be the plays that happened a lot, but also I think are the plays that led us to where we are with this market.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I answered your
Oh yeah,
question.
you did. You did.
Like why I hold what I hold and didn't sell.
I'm going to push on just on the sense of like, these times right now with the market, right? It's a little bit upside down, but then, there's really upside down. But then there also are, innovative approaches and, and we can talk about, DGods and youths. And we were talking about that a little bit the other night, but, he's also a 26-year-old guy that's leading that project. Right. And there's like,
it's not fucking with me at all. Cause I am not on the list. Are you?
Me neither. Nope, I'm not on there either. No, I don't know. Apparently we didn't hit the, we didn't hit the right influencer button somewhere. I don't know. But I'm curious, like, cause like there's also leaders that are, I watched Kevin Rose's Future Proof talk today, and I thought it was world-class done, well produced, really great delivery.
I loved when he was on our show too. That was
that was a lot of fun. But like, funny enough, like it took a big mistake on their part on way they communicated something for him to kind of come into that realm. And I was watching it today, and I had this aha of like, those that are kind of owning those kind of like mistakes and recognizing like, oh, wait a second, I need to show up, because I believe like the way he was showing up in the YouTube video that they did today, talking about the Moonbirds and Proof Collective's roadmap.
You were the first person I wrote. I'm like, have you seen this?
You did. I know. It was such a interesting component. So I guess the other piece of this is like, there are projects that we get into that we feel have like that hope, and then they start to kind of show either different signs or changing times, or let's face it, I mean, the real truth comes out when the market is where the market is now. How are you looking at like those that like to champion or even give second chances or third chances in this space? Like, how are you like kind of identifying that? Because I think that's a really important cause.
We're so fucking early.
Yes.
We're early. We're allowed to make fucking mistakes. Amen. We're early. We're allowed to show grace. Like, are you kidding me? Nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. Like, seriously, stop acting like you know what's going on. Nobody knows what the fuck is going on. It is the Wild Wild West. Like, seriously, stop playing.
Yeah. Stop. And not to mention, like, it is, like what we look at innovative, and like we have from Goblin Town to the youths list, right? There's like, it's like throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks, and then that's like the innovative. Now we're supposed to like ride that backside. But I think the other part of
people are buying goblin shit and dick butts and like all these things that don't matter. While there's literally a war going on. There's several wars going on. We have a homelessness crisis. We have an opioids crisis. We have a starvation crisis around the world. And this is what you want to spend your money on? And for what? To prove what? To prove what?
Well, and I mean, I think what they're proving is they had to go back and get a real job, because most of them that were doing that, have
good. So, having someone like Kevin Rose and Ryan Carson and Chris Cantino, who come, Alexis Ohanian, who come from the world, of VCs and Web2 and have built like some dope shit.
Yep.
Yeah, you're gonna want to have to like trust them and listen to them. Like, you can't look at everybody like Zuckerberg, who I've heard is actually not that bad of a person, but unless you know him personally, you don't know that. There's, he's the big green-eyed monster. Green-eyed monster. Shut up, Manouschka. Anyways, you have these people, but there are also people who didn't like certain parts of Web 2. They didn't like those things, and they wanted to build something better, and they want to do dope shit that's actually like really dope for everyone.
Yep.
So they're in the space now after we've tried with all the degen shit. We tried with all the little 20-something-year-old guys who publicly are just smoking weed all day, doing mushrooms, and like, let's trade. Oh my God. And people got wrecked. Yep. There was a crap ton of rug pulls. Like, we literally are giving how much money to somebody where you don't even see their face, you don't know their name. In what world is that normal? And I'm supposed to onboard women who have sense into the space with this shit going on? Come on, man. So I mean, I like where I place my bets. I really do. And if I don't get a massive return on it, at least I'm building with people that really give a shit.
I mean that you couldn't have said that any better. I mean, I love that as like a, I think that's the piece that, for anyone that like kind of is in this space looking at, right? Like betting on great people that you want to surround yourself with and that open, some of these doors, and also are willing to, admit flaws and recognize that, nobody is perfect, and sure as hell nobody knows what the hell they're doing as a whole in this space, and everything changes. Manouschka,
I think that the way Proof was treated that way at that time, yet it's like Azuki with
Yep.
the guy who did how many rug pulls, was still able to stay on the top for as long as they did. So it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I still think, it's I mean, we have an ethical dilemma for a lot of people that they're struggling in the they have bags in places that they recognize that maybe they now are no longer aligned, but they also recognize that there's like that weird space of like they need to get those bags out so they can support better things doing better people.
I hope
But
so.
let's hope that that's that case, right? And I think that's the part.
You're so optimistic.
I know I am. I know, and I appreciate you for always, keeping me real on that too. And even like on our back chat, you'll be like, "Yeah, but," and I'm like, "Oh, here it goes." Where the side I didn't see, and I always appreciate that a bunch. We'll kind of wrap this. I know I've got you for almost an hour, and I really appreciate you coming on. You've been rocking it. For those that are listening that are, because like you mentioned about not knowing art history, and I will be the first to admit, when I jumped in this space, like part of it was like, oh my gosh, like I need to take a crash course in just understanding, art, and like a lot of the things that went
I
into.
felt like I needed to take a crash course and freaking watch and binge Silicon Valley. I was like, what the hell is going on here?
That part's true as well, right? And even I remember even being first exposed to like something that Beeple was doing, and I remember being like, yeah, they're talking a language that is not for me, and I think it's just important for those that are, we can find ways to make an impact without having to be tech savvy, without having to have like a full artist background or be a VC connected. There's so many different, paths and roles that are available. And I mean, I know that, we both agree in the sense of like, we need more of these great people, and we need to celebrate more of these great people doing great projects.
Like Jadu.
Yeah.
Jadu.
Which one was it?
Jadu.
Oh yeah, there you go. See, and there, we also, I mean, there's a project minting today actually that the Phoenix project, which is I love that they're drawing attention to mental health, but it's not doing it from like a vanity perspective, but actually doing it from like a real Web3 perspective. I'm curious, just for as we kind of pull it together here at the end, if you look at the space and like kind of like the things that either, and it's not like projects you're excited about, but like the opportunity that we have in front of us. Where are the things that are kind of exciting you as we move forward?
Well, good. Now I can really talk about Jadu. I'm really excited. I think I met Assad when in Jin's room when he was talking about his holograms, and he was doing a drop for the girl who created the Renegade dance.
Oh yeah.
Didn't get any credit for it.
Yep.
And just listening, I was like, okay, I'm following this guy to the end of the earth. This guy is just absolutely brilliant, and he sees what's wrong, and he is also really into a tech that can go to a dark place if it's not run by the right leader, right, which is AR.
Yep.
So I'm really, really, really excited with what they're doing. Not only with the jetpacks and the hoverboards, they found a way to gamify the world by bringing all these different communities together.
Yep.
Because as you see, everything's so tribal.
Yes.
Like we're all in here for the same thing. So what if it's you're repping a monkey or you're repping a freaking lazy lion? Like,
yep.
Lazy lion still around? Like, where am I pulling these things from? So he's doing that, and then this collaboration with Michael Bay with the Avas, it is a whole new way of storytelling that we haven't seen yet, and you see people are more and more, whether it's with TikTok videos or Instagram posts, are share more and more the stories that they want to tell.
Yep.
So being able to bring that into the Web3 space through this tech, because that's the thing we have to remember. At the end of the day, these pictures are great and the amount of money and crypto that's being exchanged is great, but it's all because of this technology.
Yep.
First and foremost. Um, uh, I just think everybody at least learn a little bit about him and what they're doing. At least if you're not going to jump in, but definitely learn about it.
Yeah, and we'll definitely talk that on the podcast. We'll include some links there as well. I'll leave you with this question. For those that are listening, you're really tapped into the space, and as far as like trends and things that are going on, where's like your source of? And I'll just kind of spoil a little for the audience. Like one of the things I talk about a lot is like I recognize leaders that are willing to support and also be listeners as much as they are, speakers. And Manouschka, you and I are often in the audience of a lot of these rooms. And to me, I hold that at the highest respect, because there's others that if they're not on the stage, they will not, be associated. But for like, what is your, like, is it just Twitter and Discord? Is it, Telegram and some alpha groups? What is your kind of recipe for kind of staying in the know with this space?
It's Twitter predominantly, which is crazy because if you talk to me about being on Twitter last year, I'm like, you're out of your mind. I used that for 5 years just to cuss out Trump. Like I hated that place. And I was very hesitant to come in. But definitely Twitter and the power of the back channels in Twitter. Like I have several different groups of people that I speak to in length throughout the day and night about a myriad of topics. And in that, a lot of alpha comes out and a lot of, and it's alpha where it's like it's a group collective saying the pros and cons instead of just hearing somebody on a stage who was paid or been given NFTs to say, oh, this thing is dope and da-da-da. Like you're really hearing from different people from what they've heard or what they've experienced or what they know, Here's the thing about me, because like when I can't believe I'm saying when, because I still work as a chef, but prior to the pandemic, I worked for a lot. I worked for Drake and Ariana Grande and Justin, Brett Favre, who's like him and his family, like one of my best friends. Like I've worked and been in the homes of like absolute leaders, like just icons. And so I've heard them talk about like how they run their businesses and how they how they're able to stay relevant, so I kind of bring what I've learned in those homes into here. So that's what's really benefited me the most. And I just lost my chain of thought.
Well, I think that alone, I think is, part of the idea, right? Listening and learning and bringing, our experience from some of these leaders that have been there, done that before. And
what were we talking about that brought me to that?
That was more about, like how you get your alpha and how you're, using those relationships to get some of that.
Yeah. So being that fly in the wall in the home, I'm in the fly in the wall in these back channels, in these rooms. Like you said, if I'm not on stage, I'm still in the room listening.
Yep.
And I'm listening with a group of people, like we're all in the same 2 rows. And then, so I know exactly who to talk to. And then, we're back there talking about what we're hearing,
Well, I think that's an important component too. I think just, and I'm part of a couple of those back chats that we have together. And I do love, it's about surrounding yourself with people that are willing to speak all pros and cons and be able to see things from all sides. And I'm blessed to call you a friend and someone that I have this in this space. And we're gonna hang out in person one time very soon. And both of us were running like crazy there in New York last time, but we're gonna make that happen. So yeah, I'll put all your stuff in the show notes. For everyone that's listening, definitely give Manouschka a follow. Check us out. We Monday nights we do Alpha Mondays together, 9 p.m. Eastern time, and we have a heck of a great time. So Manouschka, thanks so much for jumping on here with me. And
we didn't forget to give props to Shira.
We gave her props at the beginning, and she's gonna come on too. We're gonna bring her on there, and I'm very thankful. And it's funny, her and I met for the first time in 2013 on a panel at South by Southwest together. Like we literally were way old school into social media day world, and and then kind of separated went our own ways, both in the content game. It's kind of fun how all that kind of comes, full circle today. But, for those that are listening to, I just think one of the things, I preach here, of course, the mantra of the podcast is we are greater than me. And with that also comes in the sense of just celebrating amazing humans. And I tweeted this out a little earlier. Like, I don't get nervous or excited about, many interviews that I do. And I was excited about this interview more so than I probably have just about all the interviews I've done on the show. And it was partially just because I want to amplify all of the amazing things that you're doing in this space, the impact you're making, because I believe the more that hear this, the more great people that are going to come in this space. Because I don't give a shit about mass adoption. I want adoption for those that are willing to build this culture and come in here and do things the right way. And Manouschka, you're an amazing leader, a great friend, and excited to do more things together.
I love you so much. I'm like so sick, but I was like, no, you got it. You cannot. You have to.
Well, I appreciate that. And no one will believe that you're sick, and no one will believe that you're over 40. So you got that going for you, no doubt. So for everyone listening, yeah, there you go. Everyone listening, make it,
man.
Yeah, well, you rock. You and you're. This has been a lot of fun, and I think this is, the power of Web3 right here at our fingertips. So everyone, make it a great day, and until tomorrow, cheers.
Cheers. Thank you, Brian.